came over and helped me for a minute.
I didn't do anything.
Like some guy in a shop would be like,
Jesse had that on
I
his
know.
own.
I should have just taken it in.
2
but
minutes.
no one in Johnstown will work on BMW, so I got to take it to like Easton or something.
Wal-
well, it was a
for Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. We'll go ahead with the roll call.
Chairman Ryan Green.
Here.
Jesse Coppel.
Here.
Ken Lee.
Here.
Walter Rob.
Here.
Steve Dyer.
Here.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will start out first with public comment that is not on tonight's agenda. So anything on the agenda will not be commented on at this time. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to approval of the minutes from October 10th, 2023. And I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we'll move on to application 10-10-2, the temporary use for 480 West Coshocton Street. And I will let our staff give the update on that.
Sure. And just to give a little bit of background, because this is your first temporary use permit application unless you served on a board somewhere else in some other municipality that did the same cool thing that we're going to do tonight. But just to give you background, so a temporary use permit was an ordinance that was put into effect by council probably about 5 or 6 months ago. It identifies a piece of property that is temporary as far as the use is in nature, so it's not a long-term zoning situation. So leaning on Trevor to kind of help us with how we navigate either a laydown site or I think Trevor used a great reference, a Christmas tree lot, something that's seasonal, could be, on the other side of Christmas trees, it could be a mulch kind of situation, something in temporary in use. So that's where we are at with the temporary use permit application. The application process starts here. Whether you approve, disapprove, whatever it is tonight that you end up doing, it does go to council within 10 days. So this body is not necessarily the end-all to be-all with the decision, but it is and can be a recommending board to give guidance to council for their decision ultimately at the next council meeting. So with that, tonight we have a laydown site that was in a GCC 2 district, which is inconsistent with the allowable uses that are in that particular district. So pitching up the idea of how do we navigate through this particular situation where all parties can kind of walk through this at the end relatively, I don't want to say happy, but relatively agreeable to an outcome that I think is helpful for the city, as well as allowing the applicant and the property owner to navigate through something that's currently existing in a non-conforming way without a current application. So with that, a lot of the information's in your packet. In that recommendation, Trevor has been kind enough to kind of roll through that, and I won't steal his thunder, but Trevor, if you want to read through some of your recommendations that you came up with for the board, and then ultimately we go to council, I'll shut up now.
Sure. So just starting with the review criteria that are in place for the temporary use permit, there are 3 review criteria. Essentially, all are related to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The first one, the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the use will not, under any circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use. The second one, the use as described and conditionally approved will not be detrimental or injurious to property and improvements in the neighborhood or to the general welfare of the city. And approved measures for the removal of the use and site restoration have been required to ensure that no changes to the site would limit the range of potential permanent uses in the future. And so in going through those review criteria, I didn't see anything that would preclude potentially approving this application. I do have some recommended conditions, and I can repeat these later if needed, since this is just the opening of the conversation. One of the requirements of the TUP is that any use that's temporary in nature has to be screened from the adjacent roadways. Unless something's changed, that's not the case currently. So I'm recommending that screening at least be installed along US 62 to help provide some visual buffer between the roadway and the existing laydown yard. A performance bond or a certified line of credit, basically for an amount acceptable to the city for restoration of the site to pre-use conditions, be presented by the applicant, not tonight, but to the city. Let's see, and then that should include any costs to remove any structures, any fencing not previously in place, all materials, and any gravel or ground stabilization materials that were installed to support the use. And then this one is completely up to you all. I've done this in the past, but because this use has been already existing for some time, I would recommend that you put a time limit on this and basically not recommend it be extended any further just because it has been being used for some time under this use. But other than that, those are the three criteria or the three conditions that I'm recommending from a planning standpoint. I didn't see, and just to clarify, I didn't see anything based on the criteria that are in the code that this use is obviously violating. Obviously, you all have a better understanding, being that you're residents and experience this far more than I do. But I didn't see anything that would be truly detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the community based on what we're doing. So with that, I welcome any questions or turn it back to Sean.
All right. Anything further, Sean?
No.
All right, I'll go ahead and have our applicant come up, and if you'd like to tell us about the project. And then we will have some questions from our board.
Sure. So we have been using the laydown yard for, since June of this year. Just a staging area, temporary trailers, parking for our employees and inspection staff for the project. The project we're currently working on is providing the pipeline for the Intel. It starts up on Tippett Road, runs down along 62, and then Beach and out Miller and into the facility. So
All right.
Is it a water pipeline or
gas.
gas?
Yes. Yep. All right, so a couple questions. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. All right, so a couple questions I did have on this right off the bat. And I know this will be quick because we don't have a lot of public comment, but, so number one that I had on here, just things, and I know this is our first time for staff and everybody going through this. But just for the application, things that were not listed in here, and I'm hoping you can clarify for us. So on the map, it does not identify, so we asked for setbacks, utility connection, topography contours for, probably for runoff, and the planned grading. I noticed that it didn't have that on there, also with the setbacks, and things like that. So I didn't know if you had any other maps or anything that you brought with you.
I don't have any additional
Okay.
information. What I provided was what I was capable of providing through Bluebeam.
Okay.
Topographically, it's relatively flat. We're in the flat area. As far as runoffs and streams, we're following an ENS policy by the gas company. So
Right.
the sill sock is in place to prevent any of that into any waterways.
Okay, yeah, I knew that you had some things for runoff in progress, but in the future, and, it'll be different when we have stuff come in the future, more for our board than anything and our staff, but those are the criteria that we set, so those are the things that we're gonna wanna see. Also on setbacks, I know that there's a front, a side, and a rear setback, so front's 40 feet, side's 25, and rear's 25. And I'm not sure, looking at the map, if it meets that criteria as far as where things are sitting on that site. So that was a question that I did have. I don't know if you have any of that information.
Could you repeat the dimensions again?
So as far as the setbacks, we have a 40-foot setback on the front and 25 on the sides and rear. I wanted to make sure that we were meeting those. And then the other question that I had centered around, obviously, we're getting into fall, winter, spring coming at us, the messiest time of the year. I just wanted to make sure that there was a plan in place to make sure that that road wasn't being impacted, because as you know, it's at the bottom of the hill there, and when we have truck traffic for everything else going on around here, it's definitely going to be a spot where if it's messy, ice can collect in a hurry, it'll be dangerous. It's definitely we have a lot of traffic congestion through there.
We do have equipment on site, the street brooms, if we need to get out there and clean it up.
Okay.
The area has been mostly gravel, so any use for parking vehicles moving in and out of the area should never touch any
Okay.
undisturbed soil.
Okay.
Should be limited.
Other questions from
Are you
our?
Ryan?
I am.
Okay. Hi, I'm Steve.
Nice to meet you.
What is your timeline?
So project completion is going to be somewhere in the month of February, based upon current productions. So,
Where you're currently at?
yep.
Okay. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, I see the need for fencing, screening. Do you have a plan in place for what type of fencing you put up?
It would be a temporary fence, and then obviously some fabric on it to prevent the disturbance or the view of the residents. Really looking for what dimensions you guys would like there, as far as
It calls for 6 feet in the,
6 feet high.
Yep.
Right, but as far as the property, like where the fence starts, where the fence ends, I believe it's a pretty large parcel. So if it's just road frontage, kind of, there's a bridge
yeah,
on the one side, and then obviously the north side.
yeah, it'd be the road frontage there, yeah.
So this, I believe it calls, let's see, minimum 6 feet in height, fitted with screening panels to block views and views of material and equipment within the site to the general public. The screening shall be kept in good working order. I don't think it exactly says it. I know we have houses behind there. I think ideally you would probably have some sort of screening on the majority of the site, but I would definitely hope along frontage and anywhere that there's gonna be residential. Do we have a picture of that, Sean?
It says enclosed.
Does it say the entire site?
In my mind, that's the entire.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought too. Reading it in 2 seconds, I didn't
No,
know.
I would agree with that interpretation.
Yeah.
Whenever I recommended the fencing or the screening we put along 62, that was basically in response to, I know that Raccoon Creek Estates is just to the northeast of that. So there's about 150 feet approximately of setback between any of the properties in Raccoon Creek Estates and the nearest kind of, based on an aerial image taken in July, based on the existing materials that they had out there. And so because of a large setback and there's a pretty healthy vegetative buffer between Raccoon Creek Estates and the existing use, I felt a decent compromise, since this use was already underway when these regulations were passed, were to put a screen along the 62 frontage, really to prioritize that, blocking that view first, since there is so much green space around the other sides of the property. However, the commission can do what they
Right,
feel.
that sounds pretty reasonable.
I agree too. I don't see the need for the side and the back at this time. If it was at the beginning of the project, different situation.
I agree.
But I think we
100%.
do need something at the road,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, at the road and then obviously down the sides. However far you want to go down the sides is up for interpretation. I'm with Ben on entire property usually,
Well,
but
have there been complaints from Raccoon Creek Estates?
So from the residents back there, I've fielded some level of concern in an out and about conversation. Nothing specifically where they've called in. It was, hey, what the heck is going on back here? We have a house, we're concerned. And then from there, the communication was the city's looking into it. We're going to go through the process, make sure things are being done properly. So there wasn't necessarily a follow-up. There was a concern at first, obviously, with all the semis, truck trailers, pipes, kind of the sounds, the lighting, and things like that, but there was never a follow-up from a specific, I want to make a formal complaint type of a situation. So I'm giving you kind of a mixed answer. So
I think that's fine, because Raccoon Creek, those homes are higher elevation anyway, right? So a fence isn't really gonna do much from a screening
To
perspective.
keep kids
Right.
out.
I agree with the screening being primarily along 62, that makes sense. I think what might be helpful from a visual perspective when it comes to those that are curious about the scope of the site is maybe something denoting the boundary, the area that that you're utilizing in that space. So if there can be, I don't know, a temporary fence on a corner showing, where that corner is, and that's the extent of the boundary. It doesn't have to be a formal fence or something like that. Maybe it can be, an orange snow fence or something on the corner. Just so that those maybe at Raccoon Creek can say, okay, well, this is the visual area of what they're looking to do. And then if anybody from the city or anybody's running by and sees it and can say, okay, well, this looks to be outside of the scope of what they're looking to do. I think it can be simple, it can be cheap, it can be visual, but at least it kind of gives people an idea of the area. But I think the main point of my thought, and I agree, it doesn't need to be the whole piece at this point. Primarily along 62 makes the most sense. Does that make sense? Okay.
Just so I'm understanding, Commissioner Lee, basically just turning the corner from, like, setting kind of the boundaries on left and right, where, how far they're going? Is
It
that what
may,
you're getting
I
at?
would even say on, maybe primarily along the area that, if you wanted to note at particular points
Right,
along the Raccoon Creek Estates
Oh, I'm following
boundary,
you. Okay, sorry.
boundary too.
gotcha.
So that people understand how far toward their home or their parcel you're going to go.
Gotcha. It looks like do you have silt fence up around the entirety?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
There's no plans for expansion
Okay.
of this yard. What's been there since June is
Okay.
what it's gonna be until February.
So is that silt fence kind of the boundary then?
Yeah,
Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
we
Okay.
cannot disturb anything outside of those ENS controls for the.
Is that all along the Raccoon Creek side? Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then maybe that's enough.
I think in the back to cover the scope of the site, I think silt fence works.
Yeah.
I think in the front though, I mean, the uniqueness of this property is when you're coming downhill, I don't care how tall the fence is, you're
You
gonna
can
see
bracket
over
it or something like
I
that.
think you bracket it, but that's what I'm saying. You come
5
off,
feet.
however, at least probably maybe 10, 20 feet or something like that. If that's chain link fence, it probably comes in 10-foot sections, I'd imagine. So 20 feet wouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, the difficult, and not to just, you're on the uphill side here, so, as we extend this up the hill, we can kind of angle it back until the bank drops off.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, we can, like that right there, we could put a couple
Yeah.
strands there by that sign and block off the view as you're coming down the hill.
Number one, we want to block it off as much as we can from view, but also, you have kids that walk up and down the roads, and I wouldn't want them to walk into the site at night or something like that.
We have had no issues
So,
with the
and
residents.
I hope there's no issues, but
Understood.
I know that we do, and people will be people, so.
So does that mean you're gonna have a gate?
So, I mean, that's for you guys for interpretation. If you'd like a gate, there's an existing gate there. Obviously, it's not a visual barrier, and it's open during work hours, so 7 to 7, that yard is open. On non-working hours, the gate is closed for security.
So it's like a farm gate?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see it there. It's
I don't know that there's an attractive gate option available, for a work site.
I personally think a gate's a gate.
Yeah.
I think we've,
As long as you
Chain
lock it
link
at night.
fence, I mean,
I was thinking like a
biggest
horse
concern
farm,
I've
like a
got.
horse farm
And these
entrance.
temporary fences, they'll have sandbags on them to hold them down, but if somebody
Right,
wants.
that's
in
stronger.
there-
Have you guys been to Iron Gate up 37, maybe?
Super nice gate.
yeah,
No.
I think this conversation has a much different tone if we're talking before the project
Absolutely it
starts,
does.
Because we have
I'll speak for
three,
staff on
4 months at this point, that some
Well,
of
I'm
it is a
thinking-
learning process for us to make sure that we remediate what we can with the time that we have. But I think it's also a learning process for when this comes before us again for a similar type of use.
Yeah, I would say on the fence, you have chain link, so the screening that you guys had, what do you typically put up? Just like a vinyl mesh
Would
type
be like a
thing?
black fabric.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, and it's like some sort of vinyl mesh, or
Yeah,
what is it?
something the wind can blow through and not blow.
Yeah.
the fence over.
Yeah, and that's the second part of it, That's the part in here where it says be kept in good working order, so that if we get a massive windstorm, half of it isn't hanging off in the breeze.
Besides,
So I would say a neutral color, black preferably, but at least a neutral earth tone of some sort, not orange snow fence or anything like that, but,
I'm asking.
yeah, if we could do that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, what I can do is, just for a compliance standpoint, so that we can obviously enforce what is the desire of this board. I hear a chain link fence with a fabric on it to kind of start at this reference point here and to kind of run down to here. Is this a reflection of what you are wanting to do? If it is, I'm going to take a screenshot of it, and this will be an exhibit that you can reference in a motion if you so choose to make it.
So
well, you want to bracket it though.
we had talked about it kind of following that silt fence. So whatever legally it has to do, I'm sure there's some sort of, is there anything with that silt fence that would impede that? Probably not, but
So are you talking about the silt fence here?
wherever,
Yes.
that's where it comes down to?
So there's
Oh,
a
okay.
silt fence right here.
Okay.
So there's nothing necessarily in the front, except for I believe there is a silt fence here. But it's further back on the site.
Okay.
So it kind of gives that 40-foot setback, which I believe they meet that in the requirements from here.
Okay, I was
to here is
surprised
about
it
40
was,
foot.
I figured you would have gave yourself some more working area.
Well, it's about 45. So they've got.
I
some
would say
areas.
the frontage is fine then. I figured the silt fence would have been the whole frontage.
So I will.
Maybe with the floodplain, I guess, maybe you guys could only do so much in there.
We only really wanted to take what we needed.
Okay.
I mean, we developed it, like I said, we stripped some topsoil, we put stone down for ease of parking and just the, like you said, the muddy conditions. But, yeah, we didn't want to take up more space than we needed.
So I would say the frontage, the balance of the frontage, and then we bracket the ends 20 feet off each corner. Because I think that'll at least give, like what Ben was saying, that, covers the property lines. It'll also give a little bit more cover and hopefully deter anybody who decides to walk off the road there and maybe onto your property.
I don't think you need any different gate than what you have.
Right.
Excuse me.
You've created the legal definition of a gate, and if somebody's onto your property, probably legally, you're fine, I'd imagine.
Need a
I asked
sign
our
as well.
legal representative down here.
You also need a trespass sign.
You need a trespass sign.
And you know that if this gets approved, that you need to post the approval on the fence, right? And that's more so for the public's understanding than anything.
Yeah, there should be a social media post that this is the dates. Because everybody wants
Right.
to know.
There has been a lot of questions, how long this is, what it is.
Right.
And so, and I've conveyed that to Ryan. I said, it's not just a exercise to go through. We're trying to really, trying to be receptive to the citizens that are in the area and try to answer some of those questions that they have, so.
They pass it every day, and a lot of them sit there and eat ice cream and stare at it.
And just to further
Not me.
conversation that started, if this was a brand-new project, we would probably, from a staff recommendation standpoint, probably lean a little heavier on some of the requirements, but knowing this is kind of a situation where new process, trying to get it across the finish line, trying to meet somewhere in the middle. I don't view this as a precedent-setting situation because it already existed. He was in a violation. We didn't want to issue a violation. Applicant was willing to work with us. So trying to have a little bit of navigability with this particular site. So, but no, in the future, there will be a heavier recommendation through staff on the requirements that are set forth. I believe they meet all the setbacks that are issued in this particular guideline, so.
I think for me, a lot of, because I have a couple others too, but for me, it's also taking a snapshot of where we are right now, because if this site continues to stay undeveloped with everything going on around here, it's probably going to have attractability to remain a temporary use site for,
Yeah,
A
until
long
it's
period of
developed,
time.
it's a great place to,
Yeah, and it
to
has
sit
been,
things.
it was a temporary use site previous to us. The
Yeah.
pictures, the Google Earth image you're seeing here is before we showed up.
well, then before that, it was a
ODOT.
muffler shop.
Muffler shop?
It was a muffler shop,
There was a
Way
muffler
back
shop
in the day.
there?
way back when.
Oh, wow, that was before us.
This was an enforceability, and I tried to, Ryan has been very candid with conversations, and I understand where his, hey, this was a lay-down site beforehand, and I say, well, there was a different administration, and there was an absence, not very long, but there was a time, and whether it be 2 weeks or 2 months, that it did go from ODOT to nothing and then back. And then we did talk specifically about the reclamation, bringing back the site. My recommendation would be to council and to you all that what currently existed there prior to their presence would be the requirement whenever they leave. Not to say they've got to do a full
Right.
site, dirt. Now, the beauty of this
Sewer
is.
parts and
Right, I do have a good reference point. So this is kind of.
leave the sewer parts.
Yeah, this was the beginning piece, or I can even pull back a little bit further. base map, 23, 22. So now that's prior to ODOT. So Ryan has made a pretty good verbal commitment to, hey, we're gonna meet you.
Ryan, our
there.
applicant.
Yes.
Well,
Ryan,
that's,
our applicant.
that's one of the things that I
It's a
had.
good name.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah. To say, hey, we're gonna do our best, and it's probably gonna be better than what we found it from ODOT, but if you're asking for us to go back to, you know, that's a different conversation, and I don't know that it's probably not a defendable position from the city, if in our code it says
Right, when they
temporary use
moved in, I
permit.
think that's reasonable.
Right.
That's what, my next recommendation as a condition is gonna be, and I think it would be beneficial to have it for the council hearing, is what did you do when you got there? And what are your plans to do when you leave? So all current remediations or alterations specific to 1132 or in addition to 1132 would be a condition that I would have. And then from an application standpoint, I know there are some pieces missing, but I would also think it would be good to have a letter on file from the parcel owner. I didn't see that in the application, noting allowability of use by Miller Pipeline, and then noting chapter 1132. And that would be another condition I would have, and that's to ensure that the owner understands the chapter that's being applied as well. But just so that we have that on file for allowability.
Can you repeat the chapter, please, for accuracy?
1132,
Thank you.
temporary uses, yep. Does that make sense?
It's a really good idea because we've had some issues where people were applying for things in here where we're not sure if the owner knows or not.
Well, the letter's a part of it. It wasn't
Title guy
a part of
loves
the
that.
code. It wasn't a part of the
Let's say
application.
the title guy loves that.
Which I get, that's okay. We can make it a condition for the next phase. And then in future iterations, obviously, it'll be
Standard.
a much more complete packet going forward, having this conversation beforehand. But then, with respect to the bond, is that a city setting? I think Steve was asking that too. Is that the city that's going to set what that number is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a staff recommendation. Ultimately, council will have to be comfortable with that amount that staff's kind of come up with. And that was derived from a verbal conversation with Ryan, the applicant, and myself, and just a general understanding of we're not ripping up asphalt, anything along those lines. Once they remove all the items from the site, really, we're just looking at gravel restoration and taking that gravel out of there, putting dirt back where it was, seeding it. So he felt comfortable with 20. I feel pretty comfortable with 20. You're honestly probably going to have a better sense of what it's going to cost. But if you gave me a $5,000 mark, I'd probably have some hesitation. If 20,000 is agreeable to everyone, I think it's a realistic number.
Trevor, you feel all right with that?
I do if Sean does. In the past, I have requested from applicants something like basically like a line item. You know, what each component of that would cost. That sometimes helps bring a little more realism to it, or at least allows you to kind of focus in on that one key particular area if you're concerned. But I don't have any immediate concern with that, and I always look at those sorts of like bonds or the lines of credit to restore those sites as worst case scenario if the city, has to go back and do that. It sounds like Mid-Ohio is more than prepared to, and have already made plans to, return the site to pre-existing conditions. So it's not a big concern to me, but it is very valid. Yeah.
And we're gonna have
Standing
those, we'll have those changes enumerated in one of the conditions that I talked about already, so it's not like we're gonna be blind to what's going on.
So that's what I thought it was. It was like it's basically an insurance that they're gonna get it
Exactly.
done.
Yeah.
The expectation is the applicant does
So
that.
20,000 sounds.
Right.
20 cents.
I feel that if they walked away from the site, removing all the items that are there, because then it would be in a violation. If they continue to operate, that would be a violation. But as long as all the items are removed, which they would have to be, I feel like the city could probably get that site back to pre-site conditions with $20,000. I could probably pick up the phone with TLV or a number of other contractors in the area, New Way, and they come
Yeah.
in for 20 grand and
Yeah.
probably take care of it pretty quickly.
There's some equipment Jack would probably like there too, if you wanna leave that.
Yeah, I
That'd be
mean,
fine. Feel free to leave that.
So is your
Streets need
February
some work.
deadline project deadline or removal of material from that site deadline?
It'd be project completion deadline, you know, depending how things go, we can move left or right for a couple weeks, depending on, obviously, winter is coming up, right? So, if you know, that slows down our progress on site. I have a project completion right now of end of January, that leaves me a couple week buffer into February to finish up and get things cleaned up. So,
So is,
I would say that, you know, verbally standing here, we will have that reclamated by the end of February.
And this permit as requested would be good until mid-April.
Right.
Actually, well, I guess once it gets through council, it'll probably be end of April if it's approved.
I wanted to put a date on it, that's just what I'm asking.
yeah.
Right, yeah, and that's totally, yeah. I was just giving the estimate of
Yeah,
the
5
requested
months.
5 months, yeah.
And we were cognizant of that during the whole reseeding and grass growing kind of conversation. Obviously, putting grass seed down in February and not gonna do a whole lot of good.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah, good luck grading that out to a grass growing quality and
Frozen
getting grass to grow on
clumps
that
of
in
ground.
February.
So with the
Yeah.
project going on, you know, we'll have Silsock still here at the project. I mean, we're an Ohio-owned and operated company.
Yeah.
So we're local, we're not gonna try to do anything to diminish our name. So there will be some E&S controlled maintenance on the
Okay.
site along the roadways. So it's gonna be really easy for us to pop in. If, you know, if seed's not growing, we can spread another layer.
Okay.
That's right.
You say April 27th?
That, as soon as it gets through council, if process memory serves me correctly, I believe this will be on council's docket next Tuesday. We have within 10 days to get it over to them, so that whenever they go through it, it's not an ordinance.
No.
No, so once they voted on it,
It's immediate.
yeah, so probably the 27th-ish.
All right. So anyone have further conditions that they'd like to place on this? So far, we have our screening, roughly how many feet of fence did you have on there, Sean?
At about 500, and give or take, and that line was not a reflection of where the screening needed to be located. It was obviously set back a little bit. You'll be able to make a determination once you get out to the field, see where the topography kind of leads you to. But yeah, it was roughly 500, kind of going from here to roughly over here. I did like the visualization of the sign here as kind of a reference point. It seems this is where the vegetation starts, so past that sign and then doing a bracket here would probably, if I'm interpreting what you all are going for, would suffice for what the objective is.
Yeah, at least 20 feet. I mean, they come in 10-foot sections, so at least 20 feet, and I think that'll detour somebody. You're not gonna keep somebody out if they really want in, but you gotta walk down in the ditch pretty far there to get in, so they earned it if they're in. I'd probably just jump your gate down at the bottom, but it's me.
Thanks for the suggestion.
I just crawl through.
I doubt people who are trying to get in are watching this meeting.
Guess you gotta watch out for other Ryan.
So, people get into stuff. But,
I was gonna ask, hours of operation and lighting, those are two other things.
oh yeah, the lighting.
Daylight only.
Okay.
We do put up a light plant. We have a safety brief in the morning at 7 a.m. So light plants do
Okay.
go up for on-site safety around 6:30. That way it's properly lighted for our guys to get around. But, you know, in the evening, it's basically just people coming back to get in vehicles to go home.
So daylight, you're done at like 3?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I still had crews out there when I was driving to this meeting. So, yeah, as far as lighting for that goes.
About a 12-hour window, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Okay.
We have had some 24-hour operations through the yard. Not going to say I'm surprised you haven't got any complaints, but if you were going to get complaints of lighting, you would have gotten them already because we have had light plants up throughout the night
Okay,
from time to time.
South of town.
all right. And they're all downcast, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The extendable Sunbelt rentals.
Loud machinery happening during that 24-hour period?
Daylight only, a few small excavators to unload equipment and
Okay.
material as it comes in, but everything's, 90% of our equipment's on the roadway.
If we do get complaints, are you open to conversations about timing of, okay. Those are some of the same conversations we had, especially with Johnstown Point, when they were going in, kind of catty-corner where you are there, because they are right nestled in a residential area.
Did we get complaints when ODOT was there? Because they probably did stuff at night.
Before my time, so I don't know. Maybe.
From Johnstown Point, the only thing that we had come was trash being emptied at like 4 in the morning. Just crazy early, yeah. But I think that was the only thing that came up. And you're further removed from residential than that, but I apologize. Those are just two things that I wanted to ask about.
So we have the screening. Number 2 is the performance bond. It sounds like there's an amount for that, and council will be in charge of that. 3 is this use ceases after 5-month permit expires. This use has been in operation more than 6 months. The intent of the city is to keep these types of uses temporary. And then 4 is the letter on file from the property owner.
Referencing 1132.
All right. Any other conditions anyone wants to place on this?
Yeah, all current remediations specific to 1132 and outside of that ordinance, as well as the plans for remediation once the permit expires.
Teresa, do you have that one?
I was a little confused by number 3 that you mentioned, because I thought I had them all written down, but can you repeat what you said?
So 3 comes off of the, it's in the packet there, recommended conditions of approval.
Just a 5-month term.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
it's a 5-month, yeah, so basically,
5 months, I just put no extension of further time,
yep,
just 5 months.
Permit.
yep.
I think that's right. Thanks.
Then you got number 5 from Ben.
Yep.
Okay. Any other conditions?
Did you reference the $20,000 bond?
Yeah, that's in,
Council.
that's in number 2. Council will set that bond limit, but we can,
I say we just put.
Make the recommendation.
I think
We
just
can
put
make that
20
recommendation,
20,000 on it,
yeah.
and then if they want to move it,
we can make that recommendation, that's fine.
since it's already been talked about.
Yep. And number 1 has 500 feet of, roughly 500 feet of fence bracketing the corners. Other than that, I don't think we had any. Sean, did you have any? All right. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve with those conditions.
Second.
All right, and we'll go with a roll call.
Finley,
Yes.
Steve Dyer,
Yes.
Jesse Cobble,
Yes.
Chairman Green,
Yes.
Walter Robin.
Yes.
All right. Well, there you go.
Thank you for your flexibility. Really appreciate it.
Stay in touch with our staff and it should be a painless process.
We'll let you get away with it this time.
Oh, there's a toll that will be paid. that we navigated through.
You don't have to stay. You can.
Yeah, the rest of the meeting could get a little dry.
All right, I'll leave. I don't know if that's good to
Maybe, yeah, maybe not.
Just more zoning stuff. When it's not your application, do you want to listen?
That's right. Hopefully it wasn't too painful.
Nope, we're good. Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to item number 7, application 10.10.1, conditional use permit for 795 West Coshocton Street. I'll go ahead and bring our applicant up and let our staff give us the background on that.
Sure. Moment to pull up staff report, and I will be deferring to Trevor. He put together a much more detailed or collaborative staff report today. And I'll let him verbally give that staff report. So I'll try to walk through this. It is a little bit complex, and it has a lot of moving parts. And trying to explain this to the applicant has been even difficult for staff to kind of walk through. These are new experiences for us as we start to navigate some of these new developments or old developments that are being repurposed. So The applicant is applying for a conditional use permit for the self-service car wash. Car washes are a conditional use that's allowed in the GCC2 district. So as it currently sits, it's an existing non-conforming use. There's never a permit that was pulled for this, for a conditional use, and that's okay. But the moment we start to change things structurally, and expansion and alteration to the site is the trigger that would then necessitate the conditional use. And then there's also some other provisions that we'll probably walk through tonight as far as discussion goes for other site requirements such as street trees, setbacks, and things like that. I'm going to let Trevor jump into some of those. So we'll try to stay here with the conditional use. There's probably going to be a reference to some of the variance pieces, but this would be considered an alteration and expansion of its current use. It's also going to require a zoning certificate. If you are here for our design review, there's a new business that's moving forward. They had a sign permit, but they're also going to have to walk through all the other zoning pieces that exist for an alteration or expansion. COA would also have to be obtained. So this process for the expanded part would have to go before the COA board. And, the design review, the COA application is what they would have to file for. There's a lot of reference for chapters that are in here. I won't bore you with all these. And then I am going to turn it over to Trevor. Like I said, he put together a heck of a lot of information, and I'll let him verbalize that.
Yeah, so just to quickly recap Sean's points, the existing car wash that's there is just considered a non-conforming use. It was built prior to the current code. It can continue to operate as is for as long as the owner wants it to. But the need for the CUP came about with the application and the desire to alter the site. And so basically what's being requested is that and please correct me if I misspeak, but what is being requested basically is the existing vacuums and their foundations that are there will be removed. New vacuums and their foundations will be installed further or nearer to US 62 than what currently is. That would necessitate, doing a little bit of dirt work, pouring the foundations, installing the equipment on those structures, and basically establishing those new vacuums. But along with that would require taking out the street trees that are currently along the 62 frontage. And so, as I was going through this, I was one of the first things I always do is see how the code defines a structure. And the reason that I do that is because the way most zoning codes are tailored or written is that you don't want any accessory structures or anything like that in your front yard, more or less is why that's like that. And that's for many reasons. Oftentimes you don't want someone putting a shed, a garage or something in front of their house, between the street and their house. It just isn't desirable for the community, isn't the aesthetic that the community's going for. And so as I was going through there, the definition of structure from your code reads, anything constructed or erected, the use of such requires location on the ground or attachment to something having a fixed location on the ground. Among other things, structures include buildings, stadiums, platforms, radio towers, sheds, storage bins, fences, signs, etc. When I read that, I would consider the equipment and the foundational structures that are needed to be a structure. So I don't think in this case that the proposed location will meet the setbacks that are required for that zoning district. I'm not saying that they couldn't be accommodated elsewhere on the site. I just don't think that the location that's being proposed meets the intent of the code in that all structures would be set back that minimum. I think it's 40 feet in GCC2 from the roadway. So what I would recommend is that we still have this hearing. A conditional use permit is needed regardless if the applicant wants to modify the site. So I say we continue moving forward with this, keeping in mind though that we need to find another location for those vacuums unless the applicant wants to apply for at least a couple of variances to, one, encroach into that front yard setback, and two, to not have the required landscaping between the street and the building, basically. That is a possibility. However, I caution the commission somewhat on that, because let's say that you grant the conditional use permit, that basically ties your hands then for granting that variance. If you approve the conditional use permit, you almost have to approve the variance, or else you really haven't done anything for the applicant except leave them where they're currently at. So I say that to say that is a possibility. However, keep in mind that if you approve one or the other, you basically have to approve the other one. So whether they request variances first and you approve those, or they request the CUP first and you approve that, you're almost basically going to have, you're tying your hands basically. And again, that's not, that you can't do that. I'm just putting that out there procedurally so that you all understand what the, the repercussions of that would be.
That sounds like exactly something like we do.
And that's totally fine. That's perfectly fine.
Jesse.
Get on with it.
One thing I'd like to add to that is, I'm open to replacing the cover trees. Those, yes, I will likely have to remove them. I'm gonna reach out to arbor companies to see if I can actually capture the root ball and just replant once I get the new vacuums in, because they're beautiful trees, right? So I'm not against keeping those trees or replanting those trees. It's just that where they're currently situated, by making the move of the vacuums, the location of them's terrible. So, we would probably get better coverage if we did space them out, because they're pretty clumped together right now.
All right. So I'll go ahead and open to questions from our board.
Are you able to answer the setback comment?
No, I'm not. I did include the most recent survey that was done for the property, but I would not be able to answer the setback. Is the setback from the center of the road, or is it from the edge of the roadway?
It's from the property line.
Right.
And so, which should be illustrated on that survey. However,
is.
It may not have a dimension on it between the property line and the existing building.
Okay.
Is this survey, is this the structure? This looks like the parcels, but I don't see any structures located on this survey.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Is this might be an old survey. I feel like we might need to have a new survey to consider this application because I can't get a good visualization of where this structure is actually on the site plan. Does that make sense?
It does.
Can you pull that up on the auditor site, Sean?
Okay.
Are there pins?
Yes, there's pins.
What would we do without the auditor site? Love it.
Honestly, some of the documents that I pulled from the auditor's website.
E. What's the E?
Survey 6, you pulled from the auditor's website.
And now, just to preface, these are approximate
Right.
property lines. I think
Right.
everybody is aware of that, but
Yes.
some people at the viewing audience at home may think that that is exactly where that
They
property
are
pin is.
plus or minus 10 feet sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm assuming you're wanting a measurement from here to the closest, or do you just want from the asphalt? I can do the asphalt.
That's about
first.
20 feet. I measured
Because,
that.
well, so it says in their parking lot. So,
Which I think has a setback.
so it's 15 feet to the parking lot.
Correct.
So they do meet that currently.
Correct. They do meet the existing setback current, or the required setback currently. Yes.
For parking.
Right about here is where the closest structure could be located on the site without a variance. And this is based off of a 31.7 feet, so I'll probably back it up just a touch, but that's based on the accuracy of that particular property line that I'm measuring off of.
So where does 15 feet get us? Because if you're gonna put a vacuum, you have to have the parking lot up there to be able to drive a car up to it.
So the plan is, where the blacktop ends is essentially where the vacuum stands will begin. And then the parking spots are actually gonna be where those cars are at now. Except these are gonna be the more modern style vacuums that you see at like your larger car washes, like a rival of ours or a competitor, Moo Moo, right? With the arms that come over and it just has the hose at the end. So that's the plan, is that we would have parking spots there for people to pull in, they'd be able to vacuum out their cars.
That's
with
the
those
actual
arms.
picture of the unit you're gonna use?
That is them minus the canopies, we would not have the canopies.
Okay.
Did you say you were gonna add blacktop or no?
No, we will not be adding any blacktop. The only blacktop work that we would be doing is underneath those stands is just gravel, so we'd be repaving that.
So why do you need to move the trees?
Because of where we would have to place those vacuums.
The
those
vacuums will be in the grass essentially?
Yes, correct. They would be at the end of the blacktop.
I see.
And The reason those trees would need to be removed, we might be able to save one of them, but based on how we would have to space the vacuum so that there's enough room for cars to be able to pull in and open doors and vacuum, the placement is what's tricky.
And I'll just put it out there, I'm not in favor of moving the trees. And I just say that because we've held others on the same road to a standard of street trees. And I don't, in my opinion, I don't know if moving the trees is fair to them or anybody else that comes forward
Sure.
that is adhering to the code that we have that has street trees within that space. So,
That circular object that's there, what is that?
Lift station.
So that's a lift station for the city. Is there
Might be site-specific.
it's site specific?
It very well could be.
There's usually some sort of clearance that you have to have away from those. I know for electrical, like electrical boxes, I think it's like 10 to 15 feet that you have to remain away from them. So I don't know even if that lift station gives you the clearance to do what you want to do.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's a city utility or,
So the vacuum pumps are.
I believe this one, and I could double-check with Jack, I believe this one is specifically for
Okay.
either this site or a collective, a number of sites. Similar situation down at Troyer's Marketplace. If you see that lift station that exists there, that may actually serve the Dollar Tree and the Troyers. But as far as city replacing the pumps in this specific one, I could double-check with Jack, but currently I do not believe that this is one that we operate and maintain, but I would want to get confirmation from Jack and his staff to make sure that this is a on-site, maintained by the property owners and not something that's obligated by the city.
yeah. Because definitely if it's the city, we have to uphold any distance that things have to be away from that. If it's your lift station and you crash it, that's on you. But if it's for the city, that's something that we definitely have to look at.
is there, and this is just asking out of ignorance, the car wash space, just, is there a reason why the pumps, the vacuums would need to be in front and not in back? And I ask that because you obviously see the parcel has plenty of space on the backside, to where I would think even from a permeability standpoint, you probably have more ability to pave some more of that lot if you needed to. But why they would need to go in front, or even why all of them need to go in front? If you have the space, you could put a couple in front and the majority in back. It's just a curiosity.
Yeah, good question. So if I were building this wash, I would have set it back further on the property.
Right.
But I didn't build the wash, so what I have is what I have. Most car washes keep the vacuums in the front because when you have the appearance of being busy, it encourages more people to come in.
Sure.
Right? So most of the time, the vacuums are on the front for that reason. And also, oftentimes people vacuum after they wash their car. So as I have people coming in to wash their car and then they're fighting traffic with people that are trying to back out.
True.
It's also from a safety perspective on why I would want them in the front of this wash specifically. So-
Okay, that makes sense.
Are you doing anything with the current structure, the brick structure of the wash? Do you have any current plans for?
Of the
that
wash
part?
itself, no. I would be removing so those current vacuums right now, they sit on top of the matching brick of the wash. I would be removing those. They just wouldn't be needed anymore.
Yeah.
But for the actual brick of the wash, other than trying to get a power wash to get some stains, we're not doing anything with that.
That's funny. Power wash the power wash building.
Looking at this lot now, is there that driveway that goes between there and CVS, is that a shared driveway with any kind of recorded easement, or is that just something that is used by the business?
I don't know.
'Cause it looks to be on CVS's property
I
there.
think it's a shared drive with CVS.
It doesn't show on here.
That's why I said it doesn't, looking at this, it doesn't show any right to usage.
If you look at the auditor's site, it looks squarely to be a shared drive.
I would hope it's a shared I don't own the property, so I mean, I would hope it's a shared driveway.
In practice, it's a shared
In
drive.
practice, it's a shared driveway. I'm just
In
saying for
reality, it's a shared drive.
for future usage and things like that, I would, you know.
CVS did not repave it when they repaved their lot this year, so I'm guessing shared drive.
Interesting.
That's interesting looking at it now.
Yeah, they didn't.
When
That's-
you bought the property, did you get a title search done to see what, if there was a recorded easement for that driveway?
Yes, it was done. I'll have to go back and see if I have that document.
Sounds
If
like
I
we-
remember correctly, there wasn't any easements.
Okay.
My question for that is because obviously with the amount of landscaping requirements that we currently have, if we enforce those, you're going to have trees down the other side. And if you ever had to create a driveway down that other side to be able to utilize your business,
When you say the other side, which side?
the other side where it's currently grass down
Yeah.
through there. If for whatever reason there was some future usage issue, uses change over the years, property parcels change, things like that, you're gonna have trees down that side for sure. I just wanted to call that out. If we do that, you may not be able to use, you're gonna have issues in the future with that. And with the majority of your business predicating on using that driveway, obviously, that's, I would get that figured out.
Was that ever owned by one owner? Sean, do you remember? When that was first
I
built?
believe the entirety,
When it was first built, is that what you asked? I was just looking at that on Google Earth. Somewhere between 05 and 06, or sorry, 04 and 05.
I believe the property owner owned, there was one property owner that owned all of this
Okay.
collectively, except for that. And then they started to sell off pieces, if memory serves me correctly. I believe the car wash was built first,
So,
Yeah.
and then
I think you're right.
CVS then came in afterward.
Yep.
Then O'Reilly's, actually O'Reilly's was not owned by the same property owner, I correct myself, that was owned by Poligmeyer, guy down here, not important. So that was owned by a separate, but all of this back here was owned by the Clark family, referencing obviously the Clark Drive address that is existing there, so.
Glad they got a street. It's nice when that happens that way.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like the two pieces that are outstanding for me are the setback piece that is something you probably need to research
Okay.
to make sure, number one, that what you're proposing is feasible relative to the setback requirements.
Okay. And it needs to be 40 feet from
property.
the property line.
So in the front, you have, so the front setback of not less than 30 feet.
30.
Parking areas shall be at least 15 feet from the right of way.
And I think, Chairman Green, if you were reading from my email, I think I actually missed.
That's an 1157.04,
Okay, all right. Just wanted.
additional district development standards.
Gotcha. Okay.
So parking area has to be 15 feet from the property, or the
Property line.
From the property line.
But I personally, I'm not in favor of removing the street trees at the end of the day. That's just,
I agree with you on that. Ben.
that's me. I think the street trees need to be there because we've enforced it in other areas. But maybe the researching of the setback will provide other creative solutions to what you're looking to do to keep those street trees there, in my opinion. But we've, as a board, have been pretty staunch with enforcing the street tree requirements and bringing those back for the view. And so to allow you to take them out when we've enforced with others doesn't, for me, doesn't feel like it's a fair application. Because what you're proposing is elective, right? It's an upgrade, which is great. I think it would be a good thing. But for me, it doesn't meet the variance standard.
And if you look at the new buildings down through in that area, like if you look at Chase Bank, or if you look at Ace Hardware that's going in down there, in that area, we're pushing for buildings to be up closer to the street street trees in between them. So obviously, we're very pro that. I mean, if you look at what Chase Bank is gonna have to put in, quite a few trees down through there. What we made Huntington put in, quite a few trees down through there. So I mean, it's not that we're singling you out at all. This is the look and feel we want for that
Tech.
corridor district.
Tech rubber is
Tech we
what
just
it's
had in here
referencing.
too with the trees. You know, and sidewalk and walking space too is another one which you have, but we've held people to that standard very highly too traditionally. We're trying to get buildings moved up closer, street trees, landscaping, you know, aesthetics out front, parking and other usage in the back is basically what we're trying to do in that corridor. And it's an overall look and feel. We're not doing any spot zoning or anything like that. So that's kind of just what the city has identified for the look and feel of the neighborhood.
Okay.
So if you tried to build that building brand new today, it wouldn't even be able to go in how it looks. It would have to be much closer to the road. Parking would be in the back, and for sure the vacuums would have to be in the back too. So I would be in favor of that, along with extended. You know, there would have to be more trees actually additionally that would probably have to go in. That's what I said up that side. There would have to be trees that would go in on that side. And looking at what you currently have, I'm not sure if CVS or a new owner ever proved ownership of that and, you know, decided to be unfair. You could have some issues there, especially if you just had to put a roadway up through the other side.
We have in the past asked for letters to be filed or at least recorded with the city for shared use of, I
Yeah.
think the last time it's been residential, but shared use driveways and things like that. So that I would encourage you, as we've stated here, to research that out to protect your ability for ingress and egress without having to put something else in. But I would be in favor of tabling this tonight to give you time to be able to go back and do
Okay.
some more research, if that's something that you want to do.
Yes, the current vacuums are about 20 years old. Yeah, they've lived a good life. It's time for them to be updated. So it's definitely something I'm passionate about doing. For me personally, it's more about offering like a whole clean car kit for the customers, right? And having good quality vacuums is a part of that. These vacuums were set to be free vacuums. Unlike some, express tunnels or bigger, tunnel type car washes, they're not just permanently on and then shut off after hours. These are like a push button. So instead of inserting quarters, you would just push a button, they would turn on, and then after a couple minutes, they would shut off automatically. We push the button, rinse and repeat. So trying to, and then we're also going to improve, like these come with small little LED bars as well to make it so it's a safer, more well-lit area for people that do vacuum their car out at 7 o'clock at night in the winter when it's slower times, right? So
That was one question I had in here too. It said improved lighting and some other things on there. Could you explain the lighting to us?
So that's part of the challenge that we have currently is with where those trees are located, they're actually blocking the street lights or the lights that we currently have on the parking lot. Yes, we can trim those, but we've all seen AEP when they come through and trim trees around power lines, and sometimes you wish they would have just probably taken the tree down, right? So we can absolutely trim them, but it is currently blocking lighting, which is not good for safety or convenience for customers. So as far as improving lighting, when I say improving lighting, it's just going to be that the vacuums are going to have pointed lighting towards the vacuum area.
Okay, and that's gonna stem from the vacuum or just from trimming the trees?
Correct. It's going to be low
Okay.
voltage LED light strip. And the boom arm that the hose goes through, essentially there's going to be a small LED strip that follows that.
Okay. Now, this is probably gonna be this will probably come in the design review process if it gets that far, but the actual vacuums themselves, do they have LEDs or light changing colors or anything?
No.
Okay.
So the LEDs that you're talking about, would they be more downlighting, not out, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, that's another feature that we've been trying to encourage as well, more downlighting versus just light and pollution.
I understand the need to advertise and things like that, so sometimes you get some crazy lighting on different things out there. It flashes lights, it changes colors, things like that. There's one down in Newark I've seen does wacky things, so, but that's not necessarily the look that we're trying to go for in the area.
Is that a concern with lights inside bays, or is that just in general the appearance of it at all?
Inside a building, I think, is a different story, but, you know, if it's gonna be right out at the curb or something like that, you know, changing lighting and things like that, that's a whole nother process of lighting and signage and things like that. You'll probably get into that further down the process if we, in the
When did you
COA.
put those lights in?
So I actually didn't install them.
I thought they were pretty neat.
Yeah, they, those lights were there, they just didn't have them hooked up. so
Really?
I tapped into them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I went
if it's
by-
inside and it's
I
part of
didn't
that
notice they had
process,
colored
you know,
lights
as
in
long as
there.
it's not going outside, I don't see a problem with that, so that's part of. what
They
you wanna do.
are inside the bays currently, and they're above the doorways, so it's pointed down, right?
Okay.
So the pollution of the light getting outside of the building is minimized.
Okay.
I thought it was a Halloween thing.
Yeah, I know, that's when I noticed them was like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
It's for the kids.
Yeah, hey, my kids love them when we go through there, but,
Well, I'll say a
luckily they're
couple-
not designing our downtown.
I'll say a couple things. I appreciate you making the free vacuums. That is a good community benefit, so I want to thank you for that. From my perspective too, and like future reference, it's probably, if you're asking to remove a tree or do some, you know, updates in the frontage or the face of your property, it's easier for me to make a decision if you have a visual representation of what it's going to look like. You know, if you have some cool landscaping plan that you tied this in with that I could see visually, I would be a lot more inclined to, you know, grant a tree variance if I knew what was going to be there in replacement. And I don't have a visualization of that here, so that's just something to keep in mind
Absolutely.
if we circle back on this project or in the future. So
And I can tell you as a guy that does landscaping to move those trees, if you can find somebody to do it, because there is power line right of ways and things through there. If you could find somebody to do it, you're probably at least at a minimum of $800 to $1,000 a tree, conservatively. So it's definitely not a small undertaking. They are semi-mature trees. I did see in here the size of trees that you wanted to bring back. We definitely, when we look at types of trees going in, we look at a caliper size. So I saw they were like a 5-gallon barrel or something like that, which is probably not, I think we have to have what, 2 or 3 inch minimum, something like that.
If you want, I was going to summarize at the end kind of all of the other additional site requirements that would need to be necessary, that if he does.
Yeah, there's
go through-
going to be a list.
If you want me to start that list now, I can give you that feedback.
Does anybody from our commission have anything else that they would like to add before I turn Sean loose on that list?
Is this list in anticipation of making a decision tonight or an education?
Probably from an educational standpoint. So whenever Trevor referenced conditional use, kind of tying it to the variance and how they swing back and forth to each other, I think at this point it would be appropriate to go through all of the pieces that would be looked at through a zoning certificate. From a site that's being altered or expanded, similar to what we did with Tech International. We went through the same exercise with Troyers. They did an expansion. They're not in a corridor district, but relative to some things that they did have to adhere to, same requirements. And I can walk through all of those, that if the applicant wanted to go through the process and at any time saw some of those items that he didn't want to do, that would be a variance. I would recommend having that conversation now.
Yeah. If the intent is to table this and bring it back at a later date, I'd definitely like to have you have everything,
information.
should we have
all the
that?
It's a great
information.
idea.
Should we have that
Before you decide
conversation
to
now, or
table
should
that.
you guys have that conversation?
My other question, I'm sure it's
Later.
on here, would be the trash can, because I don't think your trash can's currently just out, isn't it?
It's on the list.
Okay, yeah, that would be something too that I saw.
Is this the list that we talked about, Terry? It may be different, but, so there's a small section of the sidewalk that we have to extend, and then we also have to enclose the dumpster as well. And I think those were the main items, I might be missing.
Yeah, so I can walk through.
Yeah, let's go ahead. And again, this is anybody who comes in with significant improvements that they want to do to a property. Obviously, we're going to make you, come up to code on everything. We do that across the board.
So I'll start, and Trevor, I'll rely on you to guide me if I miss anything, so I always put a bracket around it. This is a start, but maybe not all-inclusive. I reserve the right to have a final evaluation of this, but I think I've got them all. Sidewalk, there currently is an existing sidewalk, but there is a deficiencies in section that does not run all the way to the property line, so this area here would need to have an additional sidewalk. As mentioned before, one of the other items would be a dumpster enclosure. Mr. Green, you brought that up. That is also on the list due to an expansion, and really that's the trigger. It is, if he kept the site as is right now, you would not have to make any of these improvements. It's whenever you start to do an expansion or an alteration on a site, it's the trigger that then brings all of these other things to the surface. So in that expansion, we would also look at green space requirement. Currently, the green space requirement is 35%. I think just with quick visual, we're probably going to meet that. Another piece of that would be parking lot requirements that would exist with this particular building. It doesn't have a storefront, and there's probably no defined parking spaces for car wash. So leaning on what currently exists, he's probably going to be relatively okay, but that's one that I'm going to reserve the right to come back and address a little bit later. Street trees was discussed in a little bit of detail, but I'm going to expand upon that. So there was
Parking might be more relative to stacking as you were to review a drive-through or something of a similar nature.
There's gonna be a lot of this that's relative, because if this building was tried to be built today, it's probably not gonna happen. So there's a lot of things that we're gonna have to work with subjectively on this.
Absolutely. So the street tree requirement, and just parking lot trees. So anytime, for instance, Troyers went through this exercise, they're doing an expansion, they had to have the appropriate street trees, but then additionally, because it's in our codified ordinance, there's a requirement to have the necessary trees in the parking lot area to give that canopy to it. One of the things I want to point out is the current trees that are on site, regardless of whether they stay or go, they do not meet the requirement. So they may have to go just to make room for the required street trees that have to go in, which are a canopy tree. The trees that are there now, I don't know that they meet the definition of a canopy tree or a street tree. That would be something that we would need to look at a little bit further. They're more of an ornamental or decorative tree. So
They're
finding
maples that are there right now, aren't they?
I don't believe so. I can pull up.
Or I looked for about 5 seconds
The
this
point
morning
to
while I
that
drove
end is that street trees are required, whether these meet what
by. Well, maybe they
we're
aren't.
specifically asking for.
They're red.
So,
Look a lot more
5 seconds, I
grouped
gave you
together than
those.
what we would
They look-
typically ask for
those
them
are probably
to be.
maples.
so you've got,
Things that I would hopefully fix.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying that I would remove them, right? And hopefully keep them if they meet the definition of cover trees. But I would more evenly space them out so that they do truly give off an appealing visual, right? Rather than.
So you would, the way that I understood your application is you were gonna remove the trees altogether.
Put in the 5 gallon.
And not
If I'm not
have,
able to save them.
and not have any street trees in the front at all.
No, I'm,
Crab apple in there.
Could be.
after talking with Terry and Sean, they said that was a requirement. Originally, I was going to relocate them, but if they are a requirement, I'm okay with that. I can
Okay.
keep them on the frontage. I can only fit 6 vacuums on the front side of the building. So I would have 6 evenly spaced out vacuums on the front, and I would put those 3 trees in between 2 vacuums. This way, when they canopy, it would give you a full effect across the
Okay.
entire, it would look symmetrical.
That's not what I understood from the application, so that changes my view a little bit relative to the street frontage, because I would not want to see that frontage without trees because it's in a requirement. I took that as a variance that you were wanting to move those trees altogether and put them in the back, which to me didn't meet the purpose of having them there. Though appreciate the desire to save them and repurpose them in some way.
so what I'm
If they
hearing,
meet the definition of cover trees. If they don't, I'm willing to put in whatever that tree is.
Sure.
right?
I think they would, I don't believe that they meet the definition, so they would have to be either stay there or they could be removed. But if they were removed, just to clarify, a street tree would have to go in its place, and a street tree has a specific requirement. I believe it's between 25 and 36 feet. 36 is the maximum allowable spacing that exists. So for every 36 feet at a minimum, you would have to have a street tree. I measured it off, you're at 123, so quick math on that, you're probably looking at roughly 4 trees at a minimum for the spacing requirements that would exist for your street tree requirement. Now, that's just for the street trees. In discussion of the canopy trees that have to kind of surround the parking lot, and those are based on square footage of the building, as well as, back up, that's based on impervious surface of the entire
Right.
area. So you take that, there's some formulative calculation that's done, and it tells you how many trees you have to come up with. I can work through that experiment and give you an easy number, but those have to be kind of situated near the asphalt so that it provides canopy to the asphalt. The idea, I believe, when the code was written to shade the asphalt to prevent, warming.
To break up the pavement.
In the pavements
expanse
and
of-
things like that. Yep.
Essentially. that's
There you
what-
go.
Aesthetics.
So those particular trees would go around the asphalt on the backside of the building?
Could be asphalt on the backside of the building. With Troyers, they really strategically tried to place them in specific areas. I try to work with it a little bit. In our current code, it says no particular area shall have an expanse larger than said requirement without an island that exists. I think you're gonna fall outside of that total area, but that's why I'm trying to get those trees as close to that parking lot as possible so that you don't have to put an island in.
I was
the
gonna
middle
say,
of it.
he could only put like one tree in there to allow for business to flow.
Right, so if you put an island, so I think based on the requirements of the street tree and tree requirements of the site, if you place them strategically around, that's probably gonna suffice for the coverage. Let's see, dumpster enclosure, sidewalks, parking lot canopy trees, street tree requirement. And I reference these because they are separate. You have street tree requirements, and then you have parking lot tree requirements, or site tree requirements. One other item that you mentioned was the LED lights. And I heard 2 different things, so I just want to clarify. You were saying that the LED lights would be attached to the hose,
Correct.
and then you had asked if they were attached to the vacuum itself.
You said the arm, right?
So there's an arm that comes out,
Yeah.
because I saw there were arches on there. It said something about arches.
Yes.
I'd have to
Yeah,
go
so
back
the-
through
so
and
the-
read, but
So the vacuum is on like a stainless steel stand.
yeah.
And then from there, there's gonna be an arm, and attached to that arm is gonna have like a small LED light pointing towards the ground. And then the hose will attach to the end of that arm and then kind of loop back to the vacuum where it would be housed until somebody pulls it out to use it. Hopefully that makes sense.
So something that I think the design review board is probably going to really want to.
That's what I figured. That'll be more for them, but
It would.
I can tell you where you're headed.
But, so where I was going with the lighting situation is, anytime you have a change of use, and we would treat this kind of in a similar fashion, conditional use. I'd have to get with Trevor to pick our brains on this. Different uses have different requirements for lighting. Anything that's operated after hours would have the appropriate lighting. Whenever you reference that they're relying on the street lighting for the lighting of the business, that's something that we would have to evaluate to make sure that that's not a requirement that would have to be introduced, is the appropriate lighting on site, not relying on the street lights to make a safe environment for the customers that are in that area. And
They look like parking lot lights unless
Those are
they.
parking lot lights. They are specifically facing
Yeah.
Route
Okay.
62.
Yeah, these
Or,
aren't
I'm sorry,
street lights.
the car wash. But they're blocked. They're partially blocked by those trees.
Yeah, because that one tree is almost in it.
help me out here.
The one on the
Correct.
left.
Correct.
Where you at?
I think those are crab apples.
Oh,
Maybe.
there's one. Okay, so I do see
I have to
one
look
parking
at it
lot
in
light
person.
here.
There's
No,
actually
it's
there's
gonna
another
buzz it.
one
Right by that
darn near
tree.
right near that tree.
Okay, somewhere here's.
That one there. I believe that one has
Yep.
a stand on the other side of
does.
that tree. If you go, you
Yeah.
angle it, you should.
There we go.
see it.
I gotcha. Okay. So with that being said, I think he's going to fulfill the requirements. That's not going to be necessary as long as those lights are in working order. I don't see any issue at all, knowing that there's the 2 pedestals there. When you mentioned the street lighting being the reference light, that immediately triggered a lighting requirement. We're working through this with a new business that wants to go in, and currently it's just daytime operations of what was there, and they're going to have some type of active night environment, that's going to require appropriate lighting to be in place for safety reasons. So, other than that, unless I'm missing something, Trevor, street trees, parking lot trees, sidewalk requirement, dumpster enclosure, setbacks, design review board, screening, we did look into that a little bit, does not abut a residential area, so all screening is not going to be, I don't think any screening is going to be
A
required.
single-family home residential area.
I think it actually just references residential area, but I could be wrong. So he is not going to be required to meet any of those guidelines either.
Well, all the headlights really would be, well, if they're turning around. I'm just thinking the Clark Drive, those apartments back there, but
That's what I was thinking. Because I think in the code it says single-family.
there's a mound and everything like that, so
And there is,
there's a fence. for
there is
that.
a lot of vegetation that exists
Yeah.
right here. I don't know the height of it or anything like that, but
And just for quick reference, the distance between the nearest asphalt on the southern end of the car wash property and the nearest corner of the residential building is about 300 feet. So
Yeah.
that's a good distance even for car headlights to
Fine.
kind of diffuse and that sort of thing.
just for fun, you're going to go through all of this interactive game that we're doing tonight, potentially on this particular property,
Cool.
just to the east.
I think it's a valid call out. Ryan mentioned with that lift station. I'd be curious to know how much trouble that's going to give you, depending on what is buried where at what depth relative to the type of structure you need to put in for the vacuum. But yeah, knowing that you're open to having trees out on the street, I think opens up a little bit more possibility with trying to figure out how best to fulfill that requirement. And if those are too big, it looks like they were probably stacked that way to make the monument sign visible, which is a huge monument sign.
I can bring that up. So this does not trigger the replacement of the sign.
Right.
So the sign is non-conforming, just so you know.
Right.
Never touch the sign, because if you touch the sign, things are gonna have to come into compliance. And it's gonna be a 50-foot maximum, as the current ordinance has set forth. So it would probably have to be,
Probably get cut off at support our troops.
yeah, it
Right
would be
there's
half in
about-
size,
yeah.
so.
I'm not married to that sign, or the pedestal and everything else, but,
Well, Sean,
first,
the point that Sean is making
Yeah.
is even if you're not in love with it, you're only gonna get half of what you have, maybe.
Yeah, if you do change it, it's gonna be half. If
When you see the cost, you'll be married to it.
this is my first business, and I'm very quickly
Yeah.
realizing everything involved. I was talking to Terry, and he says, "Okay, well, you'll have to enclose the dumpster." I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And then the sidewalk. Oh my! It's like I'm just trying to move the vacuum.
and if you stay, and you don't have to do anything, if you just keep it as is, you're gonna go. So it's that trigger of the expansion
I
of the structure. So
And it's not it's not trying to nitpick either. It's
No,
it's the fairness piece of it because it's what's applied wholesale to everybody. You know, with the exception of variances here and there, which are the exception.
Absolutely.
But that's the biggest reason. When you're a non-conforming use, when you're non-conforming because the code was built around you,
Yeah.
yeah, you get to that one trigger that triggers
I
everything.
think Chase
Just
had to put
understand that
24
it's
trees
not-
in.
It's
Oh, yeah.
not nitpicky.
Chase right down the street from me had to put like 24 trees in.
Significant.
So I mean, it's yeah, like
Yeah, no, so I have no concerns with the trees. Honestly, like I like having the trees, and that's why even when I reached out initially, from the very start, I said I'm willing to plant new trees. Never an issue. I like the way they look. Personally, at my house, I tried buying the lot next to me so that I could keep trees there rather than having a house right next to me, right? So like I like having the vegetation. It's just that in that turnaround coming out of those automatics is relatively tight as is, especially if you get cars in there. Those islands are showing wear. The vacuums are 20 plus years old. The maintenance of them is getting, crazy. And in addition to that, I think having better lighting up there vacuums that are free to the customer after they get their car cleaned. I think that's gonna be a very good experience for the residents of Johnstown.
Agreed.
And that is my goal, is to make it so it's not an eyesore, so that it is something that people enjoy taking their family to or going to make sure like, hey, I'm going out of town, let's get our car washed, let's vacuum it out real quick before we go on vacation, et cetera, right? It's not to, definitely not trying to make it worse than what it is currently, that's for sure.
What do you think about tabling it to give you some time maybe to take a look at some of the items that we talked about?
So, just to make sure I have my notes here, so the biggest items for me would be the lift station clearance, and then also the setback. I think those are the two biggest items. Am I missing something?
Those are probably the two biggest, but I think the list is all encompassing.
Yeah, that whole list
Closure and
Sean
all-
read
yeah, all
off
the
is
other
gonna have
things.
to come into play.
Oh, those are things I've already.
Okay.
I've already said yes. We're going to do this as part of this
Okay.
process. So like, yes, it's part of the list. But I have no issues with those. So for me, the big thing is to get these locations approved through the board here. I need to understand the lift station impact there, but then also the setback.
You just need to make sure it's feasible, yeah.
And if you move it, if you decide you need to move your vacuum somewhere else, you still need 35% green space, is that correct?
Correct.
So if you take up some of your green space in the back, I don't know what the percentage is now, so. So I'm
Right.
just talking, if you're like, oh, I want to do this here, just remember that rule too.
That's some of the challenge too. On a busy day, after salt is on the road, things of that nature, stacking back there is tough as is. So if I did have to move them back there, seeing as that would probably be the only other location I could feasibly use, that'd be tough. So
You need snow for salt.
Not technically.
We
You
don't
just
get
need
snow
cold
around
weather.
here anymore.
You just need cold weather and
You
precipitation.
need a call for snow. That's
it's
it.
coming.
No.
It's coming.
As a city that has to plow and salt, we don't like the snow or the freezing
There's
rain.
no
So again,
We
just
agree to
to,
disagree.
so again,
You're a bad person, so.
so
Now, when I go to
again,
my 9 to 5, I hate it too. But
Right.
owning a car wash, I'm like, come on, let's get some salt.
Bite your tongue.
There's always something.
yeah.
Somebody
So
at least
again,
puts a
so you're not going to be increasing the size of the front the parking lot, you're saying. So,
The only thing that would change is the current islands would be removed, and then at the end of the blacktop, there would be 6 small concrete stands in which a stainless steel support beam would sit on with the vacuum attached to it.
So, yeah, there
Do you
would
have an
be-
idea of
Exactly.
the size of the footprint of that, how wide that stand would be?
so you're saying it'll look like these, just without the canopy?
Without the canopies,
Yeah.
correct.
So,
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know, do you have some ideas like 2 feet, 4 feet, or,
They are 8 inches by 6 inches. The stand of them is relatively small.
oh, okay.
It's just tubular steel. They're heavy. I've moved them several times now.
A hedge in front of those wouldn't be the worst thing either.
There may be a requirement that has some type of screening from a hedgerow. I'll have to check
Yeah.
into that. That's gonna be that 11, if you wanna check it before me, that's 1183. It's a whole landscape
A
requirement.
nice row of boxwoods could go a long way.
Well, this type of snapshot would be nice with maybe
With the
some
setback.
measurements
Yeah.
with respect to what that frontage is, what you're going to encroach with the proposed base, where you think the trees might go if we were to start over.
We would need a landscape plan.
Yeah.
So something like that, to Walter's point, or Jesse's point, with a visual, would go a long way to help us understand better. And
Now that landscape plan, does that come to us or does that go in the COA?
As long as it's consistent with what the requirements are, that's an administrative, we check the box and say,
Yeah.
meets all the landscape requirements, and it gets approved unless there's a variance that's necessary for, street trees or screening or whatever the case may be, that the applicant wants to apply for a variance, that's their ability to do so, but as long as it meets all the requirements. And the COA, this one is a little wonky. Being in the corridor district, there is some provisions that are put forth that it may actually have some landscape review, but I would need to confirm with Trevor on that. There's some bouncing back and forth of sorts that exist, so something I'll need to check into.
So, you mentioned on the visual, in addition to what I've already provided, you want something that, like a road view, essentially?
Some measurements, just showing what,
Yeah,
like
like
what,
here, where you got the road things, some measurements.
Okay.
Which, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Here.
some measurements from West Coshocton Street in.
West, and then showing your property line, and then, you know, where you're proposing to put it, and, you know, what the exact measurements would be. That would make it a lot easier for us to have the information to make a better decision.
Understood.
I do have to say, though, it was a quality packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it
it's
had a
fairly
lot of,
complete
it had a lot of information in there.
Yeah.
And it answered most of our questions, which we don't normally get,
Absolutely.
as you've seen with other applicants. So,
the narrative was solid, I mean.
yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
a solid packet. I have to give you credit on that.
Honestly,
Yeah.
because we don't get that, I mean, that,
the-
sometimes the narrative is. a
Sometimes we get a
sentence,
free hand on a napkin.
Yeah. I was like, Ben, I did misunderstand because I thought the trees in the front, you were gonna move them and not have anything to replace it. So that, I'm sorry I misunderstood that, because I was under the same impression, but whether it's trees or a hedge, whatever fits the best. I mean, I want it to look pleasing and, you know, provide some cover for the vacuums and to provide that corridor look that we're looking for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. We don't want to be an exception to the policies and how we want the city to look. We want to be good stewards. Right?
Yeah, and it's like a lot of older uses where pre-code and different things they were put in, and then nothing happens, so it's allowed to go on, then it's like catch-up when, you know, 20, 30 years later, then all these other things have changed and this hasn't, so unfortunately, it's on to you to face those situations.
There's been a lot of things pushed on me with this business.
It's tricky
become the bad
because
guy.
I appreciate, well, I
Terry's bad
appreciate
guy.
you wanting to improve it. It's just unfortunate that that's a trigger for other things. So I'm just explaining that to help you understand.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's part of doing business. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
The
doesn't really
unfortunate
affect
side.
us too much, but if I was you, I would definitely get that easement checked out for the parking lot, because the current neighbor's probably all right, but you never know who's gonna be there later on, and
I did take note for that.
Yeah.
So I'll be looking into that. Absolutely.
all right, so at your request, we'll be tabling then, at the applicant's request, or
We have the ability to table. as
we
long
can
as-
table it at our own, but
As long as we're within 60 days, and it looks as if we're within 60
We are,
days,
yeah.
so. Yeah. For conditional use, 11/31, within 60 days from the date of the application, that date being October 10th. Approve, disapprove, approve with conditions, et cetera, so. That would be my recommendation, is to table it 2 weeks, come back, that's kind of what we talked about.
If you think it might take longer, it'd be advantageous for you to ask for tabling, but if you're gonna be within those time limits, then, you know, us.
Yeah, I can table it. That's no issues here. I'll work with Terry and Sean to make sure I get all the information I need to revisit this.
I think with the holidays, you're probably gonna need a little more time, so.
yeah, you know, Thanksgiving coming up.
Yeah.
No worries, no worries.
All right, well, I will go ahead and make a motion to table.
I'll
Second,
second.
Walter's got it.
Now, go ahead, Ben.
You got
It's
it.
yours.
All right, we will,
Don't jump at once.
we will, go ahead and take a roll call, please.
Steve Dyer.
Yes?
Jesse Copple.
Yes.
Chairman Green.
Yes.
Walter Rob.
Yes.
Ben Lee.
Yes.
All right, thank you for coming in,
Thank
and
you.
keep in touch with our staff, and we'll try to get through this.
Perfect. Thank you all. Appreciate
All
the time.
right.
Chris, and
Thank
if you want a quick reference section, go to 1183. That's going to give all the landscaping requirements that you kind of called out. We mentioned a lot of street trees, but I would also reference landscaping screening. This is going to talk about some
All right.
screening.
One pool.
So it's 1183 tonight.
Does anyone have anything in the zoning report?
Nope.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry, Chairman.
Terry's just out.
Your applications are becoming better because of Terry, and I'm using that moment of silence there for a quick plug. getting structure that's a little bit more complete
Yep.
for you all.
That was a good application.
Yeah.
That one there.
We're leaning harder on the applicant, so hopefully you'll see a trend moving in that direction, so.
Which is the right direction.
100%.
It should always be the onus of the applicant to prove why they need or deserve what they're asking for.
Just,
It's not your responsibility as the board to justify their request for them.
Right, but and not to.
When you don't have any application materials, that gets very difficult.
Right, yeah. And, and it's nice too for staff, obviously, if
Oh,
you're,
absolutely, yeah.
if you're like, hey, here's what I need. If you don't have that, best of luck in your hearing.
Exactly.
and we have kicked
You
some
know.
applications back to them.
Yeah.
And said, this does not meet, and then after that engagement, eventually it's, if this is what you want to present, then have fun. But there are some requirements that we can say this is an incomplete application. Sometimes they'll give the bare minimum, and I'm like, that's all you want to present? You meet the minimum, you go right ahead. So that's where we're at with it. There's a couple applications right now that have not met the requirements of a proper application, and they're currently back to the applicant.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And there's a happy medium between
no problem.
between coaching them and saying, here's what I've seen from, our board in the past. I mean, I've worked with different cities as a contractor and realtor in the past developing things, and you come in and they're like, hey, I would have this if I was you.
Right.
And it's never like it's gonna pass if you send me this, but it's a, hey, if you don't have this.
It would be in your best interest.
Yes.
Well, the details, it's all here. It tells
Yes.
you exactly what to.
It tells you what we're looking for.
Terry gives them that, like, reference this section, and if
Like,
you
there's no
can't complete it, hire someone that can.
It's an
Directions, www, I can
Yeah.
write the whole thing, all the way down.
It's an open book test. We tell you how it's gonna be reviewed.
That's a great one.
Right.
Give you the
We provide the
criteria
links.
Of what's gonna
Like,
be reviewed.
here's the link, here's the link, here's the link, here's the link.
At least the
And like I said, Terry, you're out, but I said there's a line in there somewhere of coaching them and saying, hey, this is what you have. We don't want to see this is what you need to get done to get past, because then they walk in here with unreal expectations. But it's hey, here's what I've seen in the past, and here's what you need per the guidelines, and then good luck to you. It's after that, but we just don't want to get in a situation where it's like, Terry said that I did this, I would get it. We just don't want to get into that
We
situation.
had those conversations where.
Yeah, we're not gonna do
Nobody
that,
in this
you know.
wheelhouse says, you
No,
get
nobody
it.
here, but
And we were just saying, Terry, that was a really good.
that was a quality packet there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I let him know that, I said, you seem to me to have impressed the board, and I said, that doesn't happen very often.
True enough. It's where dreams come to die.
Deck packages, somebody has literally sent me a deck, on a napkin, and they thought that was acceptable, that was part of the they sent. So, Chris is, he's hard work, I'm gonna go back to his information plan, I'm getting to the other things that we have. But yeah, please let me know, give me feedback, if you hear things from applicants, and say, what Terry said, because, Sean's teaching me, my background is customer service. I'm here for the customer, I give them step-by-step instructions. I called everybody today to remind them to be here. That was just something that's gonna help, I feel, me, that then they don't have to wait another 2 weeks to come to the meeting. So I wanna make sure.
Right.
But Sean's teaching me to step back away from the plate. Here's the ordinance, here's how to get to it, let me know if you have any questions.
Move away from customer service to government.
Keeping that in my head, I'm stepping away from the plate, but it's
Tough.
Steve can tell you
has
as
a
a
big
government
heart.
employee.
Terry's got a big heart, and I'm crushing that heart, and I'm like,
Quit helping
no,
people.
Quit helping them. And that's usually the conversation that I say. It's just
That's funny.
point them to the ordinance. They need to do a little homework on their own, and it's.
I think it's good when you come to the board. We're all like mean, like
They need a little taste
No,
of that.
and
Everybody's like
and
not
it's
mean,
fine. I
but
mean,
it's like
when I go in with applications, I can say this as a contractor and a person who's done things like that. When I go in, I mean, all I want is you to get me from A to B, and then I know I'm gonna have to go in front of the board, and if I'd come back with a no, I'm not gonna hold it against you. Like, now I've seen some zoning places where it's like, yes, here's what you need, Ryan, to get this guaranteed approval. I never expect that approval when I go in, because I know how this works, but some contractors might, and then you get animosity, and then you get issues. So as long as you're upfront with them and say, hey, look, here's the criteria, here's what I've seen in the past, best of luck to you, that's kind of the line in there. So, yeah.
And I think I got called out on that in design review board, so this looks like the church sign layout here, do you remember that?
I think so, yeah.
I was showing a business, I said, here's a layout to follow, your template. And one of the folks on DRB said, this looks like the church. Like, it is, so I got here finally, but, yeah, if I end up on anybody's, Christmas card list this year, I'm just not gonna touch on.
Fair enough.
So with that, we'll let you go into your inspector report if you have anything to add.
I don't. I know that Commissioner Lee had a question on the curb cuts. Those are the ones I know of. The thing I'm getting coupled up with is converting from OpenGov to the paper applications. And I've got it now to where we have fillable PDFs. All the permits are consistent. They have the same letterhead at the top. So they read the same way pretty much from permit to permit. But I've got, our IT department making fillable PDFs now. And now we can email them. We can't change any verbiage. And, we may be able to get that into the website and replace the OpenGov. And I spoke with Teresa earlier today about maybe expanding our credit card payments to cover permits in the future. That takes a little bit of liability off the staff of checks and cash laying around.
Yeah, please do that.
Being a banker, I secure that kind of stuff. But, that would take that out of the equation. But, I think that, in trying to track this, I need to do a little bit better job tracking the paper applications on a spreadsheet, because I know I didn't get all of them, because I start the process, of when you get the permit, moving through it and getting to the point where if you have any ordinances that I need to read or anything like that, I step right in that process instead of going right to the spreadsheet, okay, I got a deck permit, paper permit, and that's what this, if you look, when I put these permit numbers on there, it's the date, 1010.1, it's the date, and then the application, how many applications I got that day, so that's where I come up with that number.
Okay.
OpenGov gives it a Z number, but I need to track that a little bit closer with this coming up as far as paper applications, because eventually that's what I'm gonna have, so I've got to get a system in place. I wanted to get the applications, or the permits, applications, all consistent, get them a fillable PDF, so that Sean and I have them, so that we have a dialogue with different applicants that come through. We can send that to them, they can't tamper with the wording or anything like that, and they can fill them out and send them right back to us, and it's a quick, clean process.
Yep. How do you feel about OpenGov now versus the beginning of the year?
I like OpenGov, we've just had a real difficult time with them in the payment process.
Okay.
Getting the, clients are, filling out the applications, and they can't make the payment process, so they think it's their fault.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
So they're going in 4 or 5 times, trying to make a payment. Well, when I found out what the problem was, they wanted to make sure that I was who I was, and that Dave was who he was, because all they had was the current finance director's information. We gave them, Teresa got in the personnel file, gave them date of birth. I don't think you gave him social, maybe you gave the last 4, so that wasn't good enough. So now they want track of bank statements, and it's ridiculous.
We're looking to move away from.
It's not really a question for zoning, but it's probably something that's more likely to be asked here. I don't know the council would necessarily ask that question, but
Yeah.
I like it, but there's just been some hiccups.
the only thing that we really care about is for applicants that come here, is it easy for them to use and navigate through? I know for me, getting a fence permit at the beginning of the year, not so easy to navigate through.
It's not a
Had a couple
user-friendly site.
hangups, some other things where I was trying to fill things out, it had some hangups. So, and I didn't know if we,
Does OpenGov cover kind of the entirety of the city operations?
No, that's the problem. So if you want, you got the same form for like 6 different applications, and so it gets really convoluted when you reference and you say, hey, get on the website, go find a fence permit, and the same application you fill out for fence permit is a sidewalk permit, and like I said, it really gets tough to navigate. Conditional use, I think you have to go to zoning certificate for that particular item. And some of that's because whenever we got it the base model, and you can only have about 4 different links. So then all of your applications have to fall under 4 different links. This is the feedback that I received. Teresa, you may be able to backfill us a little bit better. So we are looking to move away from OpenGov just because of the limitations it has. The biggest hurdle I think we're gonna run into is that applicant being able to pay online. They're gonna have to come in, mail us a check. It sounds like Teresa and Terry are working through maybe a workable solution. So that'll be something that maybe doesn't have to happen in a paper format. So other than that, we have been transitioning to a PDF. Terry's been doing all of those, getting back to a paper format that we can email the applicant. Sometimes that's easier. With a lot of these things that we're going through right now, temporary use permit, I don't know where the heck they would go to on our current OpenGov to locate and do a temporary use permit.
One recommendation you can check out, we were transitioning to this software when I left the city of Titusville. It's BS&A. They're a pretty small company, but they're based out of Michigan. They really impressed us when they came down and did their pitch. We had firms coming in, trying to sell us cloud services, totally custom tailored, doing what we needed. But these guys only work with municipal clients, and so we were able to consolidate all of our water, sewer, trash billing, all of our building and zoning services, all of that were under one platform. You could make payments under it, and it was much easier to share information throughout the. And they have different packages depending on kind of the depth of your operation. So just something to consider.
And I think we're going to get there. The cost that's associated with OpenGov is another thing. If this was $1,000 a year, kind of a subscription fee, I wouldn't have any hesitation, but the cost is pretty substantial for a system that's not necessarily functioning properly.
There've been some bolt-ons to it over the years, right? I mean,
Not that I'm aware of. The initial package, I don't know if we want to cover it now, we could adjourn or whatever,
no,
but
you don't have to. The other question, I guess, with OpenGov is because there's information that's archived within there, right? So
that's the piece that we're going to look at, extracting, downloading all of that information so that we have it
all right,
as a background. 'Cause
all right.
we need to have that.
Because we have local servers that we could put that on.
Absolutely.
For quick reference.
That'll be a huge piece of
It's
this.
not as if it has to remain cloud-based or anything like that. We can still.
We just need to be able to store it. We
Yeah.
gotta have all those applications for
Yeah.
background so that
All right.
if we have a question, we can go back and reference the
All right.
exact application. So that's another piece that Terry is actually looking into and calling OpenGov and trying to
Makes
find out.
sense.
Well, it's good to know. That's probably more than we needed for this group, but it's good to know. I'm glad we got the recommendation over there, but
My impression is,
pretty much all we need is if people want to fill out permits. I'll tell you as a contractor, anything that I want to do in somebody's yard is like the same permit. So if you're coming from out of town and you're unfamiliar with us, you're going to hunt for a minute to figure out what you need. And then you're probably going to have to make a phone call. And then when you want to pay for that, when you send the permit in and want to pay for it, you have to come here or mail a check here, which you're not going to want to do. So you might have to come to Johnstown 2 or 3 times before you even get your project approved, which is not convenient. So you're going to up the cost on your client, which means our residents pay more than somebody with an efficient system might have to do. Because if I can send you an email and pay on the same day and have it approved, that's not very much work. I might not even charge the client for that. But if I have to go through 2-3 days of effort, that's going to be an upcharge.
And we're trying to balance that. I think currently, because of the user friendliness or lack of, we'll get a call.
That's how they get you.
How do I navigate this? Unless they're familiar, but a new applicant, 9 times out of 10, you gotta walk them through, Terry's gotta walk
Yeah.
them through.
Or they're not going to file the permit.
Right.
They're going to look at it and say, forget it. And then, which we've already instituted something to catch that because they will probably call to get the lines checked.
oops, yeah,
So-
I get those, Mr.
Are we doing that? That was my next question. We're doing that
Dan,
now?
I don't know who's gonna take over that process now that Dan's gone.
Yeah.
Yes, he would send me an email, I'd pull up the address, and I could tell him, yes, I'm already on that, or no, I'm gonna go research and find out what's going on.
Yeah. One thing we instituted, so because most contractors will call in to Oops to get the lines marked, because you're not going to want to hit an electric line even if you skip permits. So when our city gets notified to check the water lines, they kick him an email so he can go out and make sure they filed their permits for their project. So that
Have
helps
we
us.
has the right of way ordinance been updated this year?
For payment,
Yeah,
yes.
it has, all right.
I'm leaning to Teresa, I believe so, but
I think it was this year.
yes, I know, right? They all run together.
That's good. I talked to Eric Sandy not too long ago, so
Yeah.
yeah, that was information.
He's our right-of-way guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
ask about the gravel.
Gotta get that money.
What's that?
Gotta
He
get the
said
money.
rates for next year.
Correct,
Yes, we have done that.
yeah.
Any other questions for Terry?
What'd you say?
You can ask about the gravel lot.
No.
Appreciate you coming to the meeting.
Yeah, we appreciate seeing you.
Ben, do you have your usual question on that parking lot?
I just asked him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How's that
Said
parking lot
no.
coming?
Come on now.
We're gonna ask it for you.
It's been posed.
How's that coming?
Parking lot over here at the high school.
Yeah.
I will have to defer to my boss.
Currently
Pass that to
navigating
Teresa.
Currently navigating that. There is probably a large conversation that exists in the collective expanse that's happening in that particular area in the past, in the present, and in the future of the condition of what that's at. So Teresa did kindly enough get me all of the background information. I did get halfway through it. So I would imagine maybe during the winter, once things kind of settle down from all the applications that are currently being put forth, I may have an opportunity to visit. It is on the radar.
What about the,
He's scared.
what
I
about
can
the old
tell.
middle school? The signs for the old middle school are still up? The 20 miles an hour sign or what is?
We're into other business now. Hang on, we've moved, Terry's off the hook. So we've moved into number 9, other business now.
I've got nothing, but it sounds like Commissioner Dyer does. You're saying there's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit?
I think some
sign
of the school signs are still up.
at the
Is that
middle
on
school.
Maple?
Yeah, on Maple.
Okay, I'll have the street.
No big
I'll
deal.
Check it out. Might take a little bit. We got some vacations that are currently going on, and one of the street guys moved on, so we've got a replacement that's coming in. That's going to be working through that. So give us a little bit.
Yeah.
Find out.
What is next? Oh, I was gonna ask about any businesses that are getting a total makeover that have applied for any permits or anything.
You're referencing pretty specifically. This came up in design review, so I feel comfortable talking about it
Okay.
here. Terry did reach out to a business that's having a little bit of a facelift currently. That business owner was notified. Business owner did call into the city, and then I directed them over to Terry. Terry had a conversation with them tonight. They're meeting on site tomorrow, just to kind of walk through the process. Depending on the scale of which they're doing, it may or may not need to go before the design review board. As I went through the exercise with the design review board, if you're paint on top of paint, the material's not changing, it's just the color. As long as it's a neutral color, that kind of stays in-house. Whenever it becomes a color that's a little bit more bold, I usually err on the side of caution, and I will kick that to the design review board. If the material's changing from an existing material, such as, let's say it's stucco and they're gonna put on board and batten, that's a trigger that it's gonna go to the COA board, design review board for a COA, sorry. Same thing with, if it's a brick and you're putting paint on it, that's a change of material. So that's gonna be a trigger that's gonna have to go before the design review board as well. So tomorrow will probably be a lot of data collection. Once we have the information from where they were to where they wanna be, we'll probably be able to guide them and say, this is going to be an internal discussion, or this is going to be a DRB COA application that you're gonna have to file with the city and walk through that process. So I think I know which place you're referencing. It's on 62.
There's a couple places that are getting some work done, probably should.
Yeah, let me know. We always try to get ahead of them. The one in downtown used to be an orangish reddish building. Did get painted to a white. That one was probably on the cusp of coming before DRB. However, from a strict stance on the code, it was already painted. If it hadn't been already painted, it'd be a different conversation. But because it was already painted,
Is there a code on
New material.
When you paint, you can't just stop at a certain line, like you have to paint the whole building?
Doesn't say, and this
Because
is
if you
where
look
I'll
at that,
leave on
if you look at that building, like,
I can only reference what is applicable in the code, and so what I told the
Yeah.
design review board is, if it were my suggestion to council, it would be everything in that downtown district, specifically with those older established buildings, whether it be painting or not painting.
oh, we need the overlay district, like,
Yeah,
that's a whole.
It would go before a board for their review, or at least give a variety of colors that could be utilized, and some defining parameters that say if you are going to paint the building or repaint the building.
Slate gray.
These are some, right.
Gunmetal.
These are some items
Metal,
that you
it's
can check
gunmetal.
off, so. So that's one of the reasons that did not go through. Race Specs did. He did go before I don't want to say Race Specs, KSEPs went before the design review board not because it necessarily it was repainting, because it had already been painted. The material on the top was being changed from the vinyl or the slate shakes that were on there before. He was putting a board on batten, so that was a trigger. He had to come before the design review board. So we're getting people more into the habit, or at least the awareness that I'm doing something, maybe I should check with the city. Right now, they kind of go from past experiences, and so they just assume that whatever they're doing is going to be okay. So this is the painful process, probably over the next year to 2 years, as word gets out that this is a trigger, you have to come before the committees and go through the process. So
What is the mechanism? Let's say they watch Terry leave the office and run down there and start the project, and they're done with it for Monday. Before he comes back Monday and sees it. What's the process then?
we have a conversation, and so Terry, depending on the activity. So there again, if it's a change of material, they're going to have to go before the design review board. If it's just a material that's already existing, just repainting it, we can handle that internally. They wouldn't have to go before the design review board. But yeah, regardless whether we catch them in the act or after the act, if we're aware of it, then usually we're gonna have to do something about it. So, unfortunately for them.
All right. Or let Terry work some Saturdays.
Has anyone heard when the family restaurant or the Horseshoe are gonna open?
So that's.
Where's Jim
oh,
Blair when we need him? He always had the.
We try not to
Is that
get
the
into the
Yeah, is that the scoop?
gossip area and just stick to.
You can go down and hire him as a welcome wagon. For the Chamber of Commerce, you can hire him as a welcome wagon. Anyways, so let's.
Closest down there, it's right across the street.
So I'm waiting for my
Anything
lunch.
else
I'm
that
waiting
should
for
be
my
on our
lunch
radar
spot.
coming up?
Commission member
My
Rob
God.
had asked any new businesses, and so what I will do is reference zoning certificates. So anytime a new business comes in, we are requiring a zoning certificate. That is a certificate of, not necessarily appropriateness, unless they do a design change, but a certificate of compliance to make sure that the business that's being proposed is a compatible business with that district. So from a zoning certificate that's been issued in reference to new businesses, we're working through an applicant on Main Street. I believe they had a cabinet sign up there. They have not finalized that process. The design studio that's in the back alley, that's also working through the zoning certificate. Some of these businesses, not knowing this was a requirement, have kind of opened prematurely. We're saying, hey, we got to get through this process. There's a possibility if you don't meet all the requirements, you're going to have to shut down. Whatever. Strokes is another one that's currently applying. That's an application that, in fact, it's going to have to come to us with more data so that we can make an assessment.
Strokes. Yeah, the mattress guy. I saw the mattress. I met the mattress guy.
That just transpired at the 1st
Yeah.
of November, so Terry reached out to them.
He said he had signage. I met him at the realtor meeting. Said he had signage that he was waiting to get done. Okay.
So yeah, we have not got a sign permit from him yet, but I would assume that's shortly to follow. So really trying to establish zoning certificates for all new businesses because it allows us to walk through that checklist, parking, lighting, all those things. Some things trigger stuff, some things don't. So,
Terry, have you talked to the guy, the cabinet guy, about paint, writing words on the window in paint?
I have not heard from him.
I've been
for a couple
patient,
weeks
but I haven't
now.
put in a complaint on that yet,
I
but
think everything's gone today.
did he wipe it off?
I don't
believe-
I think it was.
Yeah,
it was there this
and the
morning.
cabinet sign is gone. That used to be over top the building.
Yeah.
That has been removed.
So you might have broke that. Okay,
Talking about,
jeez. I have to
lines
call
and
shit.
writing on the windows.
Yeah.
That would be taken care of, but I have not heard from him.
Guess I need
for about
to
2
get back to
or
my
3
office this week.
Did we ever do anything? One thing I asked about earlier in the year, and I don't know if we ever did anything, when they come through for like a building permit of some kind, when they're putting stuff up in the windows like that cardboard, like the cardboard screening,
Too much.
can we require something? Did we ever write anything into the code on that?
I don't believe you could, we could not, Terry and I could not enforce it unless it is in the documented ordinance. And I don't believe it has been implemented into the ordinance for any type of requirement. I would have to check with Teresa.
Remember?
I remember conversation, but I don't believe that,
Where would that have-
It'd be nice, however we could, you know what, Trevor might know more what I'm talking about, but when you're doing construction in a building, if we could have something up in the windows, we don't wanna go through our downtown and see various forms of construction, because if 2 or 3 buildings flip over at the same time, all of a sudden half of our downtown is under construction. And we wouldn't wanna see, you know, you wouldn't wanna see just the cardboard paper that typically people put up because it's easy. You'd wanna see like a blackout situation, you know, more like Easton does when they're gonna have a business go in, you're gonna have a blackout lighting situation.
I think,
Cause they don't want their construction stuff to be seen, which I understand.
Exactly, yeah, it's a two-
And also, we don't want our downtown to look like it's boarded up just because 3 businesses changed over at the same time, which is very easy to happen. Cause we only have maybe a dozen storefronts down there or whatever. So it's very easy for half the downtown to look like it's under construction. So I don't know if there's something that we could write into the code to make sure that they're screening all that. We don't wanna see, you know, certain things up in the windows. We don't wanna see empty storefronts. At least if it's blacked out, then as you're driving by for 5 minutes in traffic, you can't tell what's going on. It just looks like the business is closed for the day.
I see Ben flipping through things, so.
Yep, Ben's
I
ready to
wrote
go.
I wrote something up previously, I can't find it right now, but it had to do with the screening into downtown windows.
I knew we talked about it, but it's been a busy year, so,
Talked about it several times. I don't think anything got put in.
yeah.
Um,
With things dying down
Oh.
as much as they're gonna die down this year.
Let's talk about parking.
I'll put that suggestion in my design. my
Yeah.
Talk
historic-
about signs.
Yeah, cause
I
parking,
can
well,
tell you
parking
things are
was.
not
on the-
dying down on this end. Just because the PD district got it across one hurdle, there's like 15 others.
I gave you a week off.
And I didn't even take Veterans Day off, just so you know. I came into the office and I had to get stuff done. So I didn't put a full 8 hours in, but it was a minimum of 6. So just to get caught up, or an attempt to get caught up. But yeah, we have budget season that we're currently diving into right now. We have some job descriptions that we're trying to get hired for and rewrite those. We've got insurance that we're currently working through. So as much as I enjoy the zoning pieces of it,
I
just
know
because the
we're your
PD district's
favorite,
gone
we're your
doesn't
favorite
mean-
board, Sean.
what's that?
I know we're your favorite.
We're your favorite board, I know that.
You're
but-
good. You're good. I enjoy this piece of it.
Good.
I wish I had more time to focus specifically on this, but there's other tasks that are involved on the daily operations. The water development is another piece of all of those mixtures that has to occur, and that's with regionalization and specifically for our water and sewer plants that are happening. So just never a dull moment. Lots of
Parking
excitement.
was something that I don't think we finished parking. Signage is, we're just gonna sit with that. That's a vicious subject. But parking, I don't know that we did reach a logical conclusion on that. So maybe that's something that we talk about at the next meeting.
Yes.
I was gonna ask, do we have any applications that you know of that are gonna be coming up?
We're talking about parking at
Sounds
the
like
next
two-
meeting.
I want to
I'll
go over
bring
the sign
snacks.
code again next meeting.
What's that?
I'll bring snacks to the next meeting then, if we're talking about
That's,
parking.
that's fine. Cater it up. I know
They
some
have
good people.
applications. If they get their applications in, and depending on the nature of the requirements, whether they need a variance or not. You said that there's 2 applications, but I'm not sure if they're for design review board from a sign code, or if they're for this board.
There's the mattress sign.
Okay, so that'll go before the design review board, so that's.
We'll at least have the car wash again in 2 weeks. I mean,
Well, yeah, we'll have that
Lot
in
longer.
2 weeks.
Maybe longer.
I gotta get it.
I think it'll take them longer.
You think it'll take longer?
This thing up.
Just saying, we got Thanksgiving and stuff coming up, but anyways.
I'm ready.
All right, anyone else have anything to add? All right, hearing nothing, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, Johnstown.